end the humanitarian disaster in Gaza and revive peace that must begin with a ceasefire and lead to establishment of a Palestinian state. The head of state noted that Egypt has never closed the Rafah border crossing from Sinai to Gaza, saying the crossing was bombed at on the Palestinian side by Israel, thus preventing aid from reaching people to the strip. President Assisi revealed an agreement reached with the U.S. regarding a sustainable opening of the Rafah crossing under the supervision of the UN. The president added that the proposal aimed at allow for vital humanitarian aid to reach the people of Gaza. Welcome back. With us now over the phone is His Excellency Ambassador Medhat Al-Miligy. He is former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good evening, Your Excellency. Hello. Miligy, good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening.
How are you doing, sir? A good day to you. As we all know, that among Egypt's continuous efforts to contain the situation, the very sad situation inside the Gaza Strip, and to be able to halt the Israeli aggression and atrocities that are committed over the people, the innocent civilians in Gaza. The Cairo Summit for Peace was held today at the new administrative capital, and a number of almost more than 25 countries were invited. I mean, leaders from those countries, to be able to sort out a solution. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi gave a very important, powerful speech at the opening of this session, and he affirmed that the unwavering support for the Palestinian cause is very important, and he called for providing means of protection to the Palestinian people at this very critical time. If you'd like to elaborate on this very important part of means of protection, what did he mean by the means of protection?
Well, first of all, I have something even more important than that, at least from my point of view as an Egyptian. This once again shows the commitment of Egypt towards the Palestinian cause. It shows once again that Egypt is not a second role player. Egypt is a major player in this, because at some point we heard some rumors saying that Egypt is not as important as other countries in the Palestinian conflict. This is not true. And I think by having all these leaders, and I think the invitation was extended just a few days ago, and yet you managed to have over 20 countries, either by their head of states or by representative of the head of states, to this conference, showing the weight that the world is giving to Egypt in order to be able to solve this issue.
Right.
Having said that, I think that the presence of all these countries show that, to a certain extent, of course, with different degrees, that they are convinced, with the Egyptian point of view, that the only solution to this, and this, His Excellency the President have repeatedly said this, that the only real solution for the problem that we are living in now is the peace process, that we have to resume the peace process. We can solve temporarily the issue now by just a ceasefire that are baseless without a peace process. So that's why we have to understand that the idea is not simply by stopping the Israeli aggression on the Palestinians, but to revive the peace process in order to have the two-state solution, the one that the whole world have accepted from the beginning, that this is going to be the solution.
Right.
So I think, yes, please.
Sure. Yeah, I was going to embark actually over the two-state solution because in order to effect a two-state solution, that needs consent on both sides, and Israel has its reservations. But before talking about the two-state solution, much more importantly, that the President have warned in his very powerful speech today, the displacement of the Palestinians under any means is unacceptable, and it does not even fall into the best interest of the Palestinian interest, or the Arab world at large, and to Jerusalem also. So he warned of the displacement and the trials or the attempts of displacing the Palestinian people in Gaza to Sinai, moving them to Sinai. Talk to us
Well,
about
actually, I want to elaborate on this point because the message today was very clear. When His Excellency the President was speaking about the idea of displacement of Palestinians, we have to emphasize here that even though at the beginning everybody was thinking that the main concern of Egypt is not to have Palestinians displaced into Sinai Peninsula, but actually it turned out today that the idea of the President, or if I may say Egypt, is simply no to the displacement of Palestinians. Whether we are talking about Egypt, Jordan, or even if we are talking about somewhere else beside their homes, they have to stay put in their place.
their own land.
And exactly, on their own land. And this is the most important point. It's not about that we are worried or we are having concerns about Palestinians moving to Egypt. No, this is not the point. We are concerned that the Palestinians should not be displaced from their areas and their land and their country. This is a very important message that His Excellency has said today. But if I may also continue to your first part, to the first part of your question, which is about the two-state solution.
I'm going to touch on the two-state solution later, but let us also talk about another important thing that is related to displacement and the Palestinian crisis as well, because it seems that the president was very much occupied by some plans that were set through that war or that fifth round of aggression against the Palestinians, like the displacement and the liquidation of the Palestinian cause. He talked about the liquidation of the Palestinian cause, and he said that liquidation of the Palestinian cause without a just solution is beyond possibility.
I understand the concern of the president about the liquidation, because actually the actions that has been undertaken by the Israeli Defense Army is unprecedented, and it shows that Israel is the main target is not just by stopping what they call insurgents into their areas. No, they actually want to totally liquidate the Palestinian issue, to the point that we've heard some Israeli responsibles and member of government talking about the displacement until we totally eradicate everything there, as if we are going to build a new city, which is actually absurd. You cannot just remove people just to destroy everything and then rebuild it again. And of course, the target is always there because we want to remove terrorism. But this is not the way to do that. The way to do that is actually by listening to what Egypt has been saying, which is we have to resume the peace talks. I mean, let's face it together. Why do we need, or the Palestinian people actually need, to create Hamas or any other groups, terrorists or non-terrorists? The idea is to restore their land and to have their own country. So once we have the peace talk and we are going to have their own country, the country of the Palestinian, with, according to the international law, with East Jerusalem as a capital and the rights of refugees and all these points that have been spoken about several times before. Once we have this, we don't need any militia anymore. We don't need to have any group, non-official group, or a terrorist group, or you call it whatever you want to call. We don't need to have it. Why should you have it? You have already your country. You don't need that. So this is the most important thing. If Israel really wants security for its own people, they have to understand the necessity of having a Palestinian state living next to them. They cannot bake the cake and eat it too. You either want to have peace or you want to have a continuous bloodshed in the region. You cannot have it both. You cannot continue to deal with Palestinians the way you are and expecting to have peace in your country. It's impossible.
Exactly.
It has never been done before.
Exactly. Since you have raised this idea on the intention of that is taken on the Israeli side, the president also raised another important evoking question that was not only directed to Israel but to the United States and people who were supporting the idea of displacing the displacement of the Palestinian people under the slogan of protecting them. He raised the question of, even if the Palestinians were displaced and settled down, they settled in Sinai Peninsula, is that going to stop the bloodshed? Is that going to stop the terrorism? And
Not
is that going to stop the war and aggression?
Against the international law and everything. I mean, it's not as simple. Even if Palestinians or some of them accepts the principle, it cannot be done simply because it's a violation to the international law and the international humanitarian law. Plus, it's a war crime. So you cannot just do it. And the world should not accept this to happen because it means that they are accomplice with Israel in violating the international law.
Yeah, he said because displacing Palestinians in the Sinai Peninsula or wherever they're going to be displaced in is going to transfer the theater of war or the war theater from Gaza to that place where the Palestinians are displaced, and the airstrikes are going to continue. The bombardment is going to continue under the claim that there are terrorists, which they refer to Hamas, and they're going to strike at the innocent armed civilians, and Sinai is going to be a theater for war. So
exactly.
Exactly.
And let me say one thing. I mean, let's be clear here. Wherever the organization name is, or its background, or how it thinks, based on religion or based on any other ideology. Anything that is going to be starting from Palestine towards Israel is going to be considered from the Israeli point of view as a terrorist act. So the idea is not about Hamas. We can replace Hamas with any other group that is trying to resolve the issue by force. It's going to be called terrorist attack.
Exactly.
So let's face it and understand that this will not stop until the Palestinian will have their state.
Their own
the
state.
idea, are the Israeli ready for peace or not? The idea that we are all having in the Arab world, and I think the Palestinian also understands it, that so far we do not have a counterpart who is really convinced with the necessity of peace for its own people,
but
not
then
just for the
let
Palestinians.
me just take it from where you said that whoever the Palestinian side is going to assign or ask or mandate to ask for the rights is going to be considered as a terrorist according to Israel and the United States, if it's happening in Israel. But it's not going to be considered the same thing in Ukraine, for example. But which takes us, Your Excellency, to the idea of the double standards of the superpower countries. They consider what's happening in Israel as terrorism, but they consider what's happening in Ukraine as terrorism, but they do not consider it.
I mean, we've been suffering from this. From day one, the West in general have managed to convince everybody that there is an attack on Ukraine, which is a fact, actually. I'm not denying this. And that we have to help them with arms, with political support, with economic sanctions on the aggressor, who is, in this case, the Russians. And they totally have a different point of view. Once we are talking about the same situation in Palestine, they just start to say, no, it's different. No, but this is not really an occupation. No, this is a conflict. That is, I mean, has always been the situation, and we felt it very much so ever since the war between Russia and Ukraine erupted. We saw, I mean, firsthand, the double standard that Europe and the West in general, and especially the United States, is dealing with the issue from day one. I mean, in 48 hours, the arms start and the political supports and the condemnation of what the Russians were doing, this from day one. While in our case, no, it's different. We have to understand. Look at the bombing of the hospital 2 days ago that resulted of 600 people.
Way more grave. It was way more grave than what's happening in Ukraine.
Exactly.
By all limits. But it was not considered terrorism.
What was the situation? The situation that we are not sure yet And there are reports that say that this came from Islamic Jihad or came from the Palestinian side. So we have to make sure, although everybody knows that the Palestinians do not have this power, firepower. They cannot destroy a building with a single rocket. They don't have this kind of rockets. So everybody knows that already. But yet, this is an excuse. And this is, it has been repeated. I mean, we all remember what happened when Shireen Abu Akleh was murdered.
And they said that
at the beginning, they said that this was from the Palestinian side.
Actually, because...
Until few months later, they acknowledged that the bullet came from the Israeli side. But it was already too late, because it's already too late to condemn Israel. And this is what they are always doing.
Actually, because we're running out of time, and I have a bulk of questions on me, a pile of questions that I have to also talk about. Both President Abdel Fattah Sisi and the King of Jordan, King Abdullah II, they talked about the thrive of the foundation of justice. Without justice, you raised the idea of justice. Without justice and peace negotiations and agreeing to a two-state solution that we said we're going to just have to tackle also in this interview, there won't be any peace, and we will continue on several stops of military confrontations and aggressions, of course, that is targeting the innocent civilians.
Well, let me tell you something. I mean, it seems that we cannot really get through with the other side, and I will not name who the other side is, but we cannot get through to the other side to make him understand the importance of having the two-state solution. But all what I can say here, and I'm saying this as a personal point of view, as an analysis, not as a representative of Egypt or the government, that the more we wait, the two-state solution is disappearing, and we will end up with something that nobody wants, which is the one-state solution. I don't know if the Israeli who wants a Jewish state are ready to have a one-state solution with all the Palestinians with them. But actually, if you keep killing and keep adding more and more to the colonies, okay, and the settlements, and if you keep all the water resources and you keep annexing land, at the end of the day, what are we going to be discussing together? What are we going to negotiate? There is nothing more to negotiate about. So how can we have the two-state solution? Are we going to evacuate all these colonists? Are we going to evacuate the colonies that you have built? I mean, the more you do that, and you will not find someone who is able to discuss with you the two-state solution, because there is no land to negotiate upon. And then we will end up with the one-state solution, which is, I am sure, a result that the Israeli don't want as much as the Palestinians don't want. But it's going to be the reality of things and the only option that could be done.
Right. On that note, Ambassador Medhat Miligy, former Assistant Foreign Minister, would like to thank you, sir, talking to Cairo local time. And we're going to go to a short break, and we'll come later on, so stay with us.